We all see this, correct?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to start and talk about the urinary system. The system itself consists of the kidneys, the ureters, the bladder, and the urethra. The function of the urinary system is to maintain homeostasis by literally managing the volume and composition of the fluid in your body. And that fluid in your body is primarily blood, but it also works on the interstitial fluids also. So we need to talk about where fluid is in your body. Okay, here is the basic anatomy of the urinary system. You have two kidneys, a right one and a left one. They're supplied by the renal artery and the renal vein. The renal artery is a offshoot of the aorta, and the renal vein is an offshoot of the inferior vena cava. From the hilum of the kidney, and we'll talk about that more, there is three structures. There's an artery, a vein, and a ureter. The ureter function is to transport urine into the bladder. And here is your bladder. Here is your bladder. And then to expel it from the bladder through the urethra into the environment, hopefully the toilet. All right? So, what is the real function of the kidney? The function of the kidney is to get rid of waste and to save important things. It gets rid of waste. And what is waste? Well, the majority of waste that the kidney gets rid of is water. But it also regulates ions. It regulates the blood sodium, the blood potassium, and the blood chloride. It is also a regulator of blood pH. So it regulates hydronium ion, which is H+, and bicarbonate. Okay? It is one of the four systems that gets rid of waste. And I know I've told you this before, but the four systems that get rid of waste are the urinary system, the respiratory system, the skin, and the digestive system. Being that it gets rid of water, it regulates your blood volume. And when it regulates your blood volume, it also regulates your blood pressure. So these functions are extremely important, not only in the regulation of ions and pH, but the regulation of your blood pressure. It maintains your blood osmolarity. It maintains the amount of solutes versus water. It also produces hormones. You know one already. Actually, you know two of them because it actually produces three hormones. Okay? One of them is erythropoietin. Somebody tell me what erythropoietin does. You learn that in the blood system. Jessica, tell me what erythropoietin does.
I'm not quite sure.
Joseph, help her out.
I kind of forget.
Don't we? Don't we all? Don't we
Doesn't
all?
it?
Doesn't
Doesn't it
it
help?
produce red blood cells? Oh,
Say it
sorry.
again. Say it again.
Doesn't it produce red blood cells?
It stimulates the bone marrow to produce red blood cells. Okay? In the presence of hypoxia. When you have low oxygen levels, you need more carriers of oxygen. So the kidneys produces hormones, and one of those hormones is erythropoietin to stimulate the bone marrow to produce more red cells. Do everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay. You also learned another hormone. It's actually a combination of a hormone and an enzyme. The kidney also produces another hormone enzyme to raise your blood pressure. And what is that hormone enzyme called? Sarah.
Is it the ACE inhibitor?
No, that ACE, the enzyme ACE is in the lungs. But the kidney, what starts that whole system? What starts that whole system? What if I told you the system was the RAS system? RAAS. What does the R stand for?
The renin?
Renin. It's renin. Who's that? Is that Sam?
Yes, sir.
It stands for renin. Yeah, renin. Renin is produced by the kidneys. It's actually a hormone and an enzyme. And it starts the RAS system to raise your blood pressure. So when your blood pressure is low, the stimulus is to hit your kidneys to produce renin. Now, here's a hormone you've never heard of, calcitriol. Calcitriol is produced by the kidneys in response to calcium levels. Now, it is a minor hormone because calcium levels are controlled by other hormones, and we'll talk about calcium control when we talk about the endocrine system. Right now, you don't have to know anything except calcitriol. But the kidney produces three hormones: renin, calcitriol, and erythropoietin. But its main function is to excrete metabolic waste. That's what the kidneys do. That's what the kidneys do. They get rid of toxins. They get rid of drugs. They get rid of metabolic waste. And in doing so, they regulate your blood glucose levels. And we'll talk a little bit about what's in urine in a few minutes. The kidneys are retroperitoneal. What does that mean? That means that they are behind the peritoneum. Retro means behind or below. They are not covered by the peritoneal membrane. Okay? So the peritoneal membrane does not cover the kidneys. So it's not protected by a serosal membrane, but it is protected by your lower ribs, So that is extremely important to understand. So the anatomy of the kidney. There is an indented area known as the hilum. The kidney is like a kidney bean. okay? It's like a C-shaped bean. And the hilum is in the center. And out of the hilum comes the renal artery, the renal vein, and the ureter. Those are the three important things that come out of the hilum. Yes, there are others. There is nerves and lymphatics, but the important thing that comes out of the hilum are the ureter, the renal vein, and the renal artery. And of course, there is connective tissue that anchors the kidneys in place, and the kidneys are not protected by the peritoneal membrane, but they are protected by fat and fascia in the retroperitoneal area. Okay? The internal anatomy of the kidney. Whenever you have a gland, and the kidney is considered a gland, just like the liver, they're both considered glands. The outer layer of a gland is the cortex, and the inner layer of the gland is the medulla. Specific to the kidneys, there is a secreting apparatus called the pyramids, and they look like pyramids. And to anchor the medulla to the cortex, you have columns, and I'll show you a picture of what we're talking about. Okay? Here is the cortex. This is the outer layer of the kidney, the cortex. And we'll talk more about the cortex. Inside, you have the medulla. Here's the medulla. And if you look at this, this looks like a pyramid. This looks like a pyramid. So the medulla inside has the pyramids, And here is the column, which is also in the medulla. So the outer layer is called the cortex. The inner layer is called the medulla. Here's the hilum. Here's your renal artery. Here's your renal vein. And here is your ureter. Here's your ureter. The majority of filtration of blood to form urine occurs in the cortex and in the medulla, and then is collected into the collecting duct, going through the papillary duct and the calyces, the minor and major calyces, into the renal pelvis, into the ureter. Just like the flow of food in the digestive system from the mouth to the anus, I want you to know the flow of urine from the cortex to the ureter. And we'll talk about that pathway in a few minutes. Okay? The blood supply of the kidneys is from the renal artery and the renal vein. 20 to 25% of your cardiac output is received by the kidney. You don't have to know the nerve supply of the kidney. That is not important. But the arterial supply, here's the renal artery. Here's the renal artery. I'm not going to ask you all these other arteries and veins. That's not important. What's important is that the renal artery brings oxygen to the kidney, and the renal vein takes carbon dioxide away from the kidney. Just know the renal vein and the renal artery. Now, the functional unit of the kidney is called the nephron. And the nephron is basically in the renal cortex. And it consists of the renal corpuscle, which houses the glomerular capsule and the glomerulus. This is where blood becomes urine. It is filtered in the renal corpuscle. Once it is filtered, it goes through the proximal convoluted tubule, otherwise known as the DCT. In the DCT, 99% of filtration takes place. Then it goes down into the nephron loop. The nephron loop has a descending limb and an ascending limb. And then it goes into the distal convoluted tubule, and then eventually into the renal pelvis and into the ureter. And that is basically an overview of what happens to urine. The renal corpuscle consists of two parts. The most important part is the glomerulus. It is a mass of capillaries that is fed by an outgoing arteriole and an ingoing arteriole. Usually, when you have a structure like this, there is an ingoing arteriole and an outgoing venule, not in the glomerulus. The glomerulus is controlled by arteries. There are no veins in the glomerulus. You have an ingoing arteriole and an outgoing arteriole. The other part of the corpuscle is what we call the capsule, otherwise known as Bowman's capsule. In Bowman's capsule, there are outpouches called podocytes. Podocytes look like fingers that wrap around the capillaries. And this is where blood is filtered. This is where the filtrate is collected between the visceral and parietal layers of Bowman's capsule. Here is the corpuscle. Here it is. Here are the podocytes. You can kind of see that they're outpouching or finger-like projections. They're actually pores that filtrate the blood to become urine. It takes the bad things out and keeps the good things in. And that's what's important about the renal corpuscle. The renal corpuscle. Okay? The glomerular cells have pores or windows. The word window, the Latin word for windows is fenestra. And they have fenestrations and they leak. And the podocytes become filters and they filter the blood and they decide what needs to go in the urine and what needs to stay in the blood. This is all done in the renal corpuscle. So here is the pores. This is where things are filtrated. This is where things are filtrated. Okay? And that happens in the filtration membrane of the podocytes in Bowman's capsule, which is part of the renal corpuscle. The functional unit of the kidney is the nephron. And there are two types of nephrons in your kidney. The majority of the nephrons, 80 to 85%, are cortical nephrons. And they are in the outer portion of the cortex. And their function is to create urine. That is their function, to create urine. And in doing so, you can see the flow of fluid through a cortical nephron. It goes through Bowman's capsule, where it's all filtrated. It goes into the proximal convoluted tubule, where 99% of absorption takes place. It then goes into the descending limb of the nephron loop. It goes into the ascending limb of the nephron loop. It goes into the distal convoluted tubule and then drains into the collecting duct. And here it is here. Here it is here. Here is the nephron. This is the cortical nephron, involved in the filtration of blood to make urine. And it all goes there, coming down into eventually the collecting duct, the papillary duct, and then the ureter, Okay, so that's how the kidney filtrates the blood to make urine. 15% of the other nephrons are called juxtamedullary nephrons. These nephrons are involved in your blood pressure. Inside these juxtaglomerular nephrons are juxtaglomerular cells. These cells produce the hormone enzyme renin, which in the presence of low blood pressure starts the RAS system that will eventually raise your blood pressure. Okay? So that is extremely important to understand. 85% of the nephrons are cortical nephrons because they produce urine, and 15% of the other nephrons are juxtamedullary nephrons, which produce the hormone enzyme renin to raise your blood pressure. There is an apparatus called the juxtaglomerular apparatus. It is basically in the walls of the arteries or the arterioles. And here now you see muscular cells called JG cells, juxtaglomerular cells. These are the cells that produce the hormone enzyme renin that regulate your blood pressure. Regulate your blood pressure. It starts the RAS system. And yes, I'm going to ask you more questions on the RAS system on exam number 3. When your blood pressure is low, the juxtaglomerular cells in the juxtaglomerular apparatus secrete the hormone enzyme renin. Renin gets into the bloodstream and circulates. It attacks a protein produced by the liver called angiotensinogen. That angiotensinogen is converted into angiotensin 1 by renin. When angiotensin 1 flows into the lungs, there is an enzyme called ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme, which converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, which is a powerful raiser of blood pressures. It raises blood pressure by causing constriction of your arteries to raise your blood pressure. It also stimulates the adrenal cortex to produce the hormone aldosterone. Aldosterone stimulates the kidneys to conserve sodium, to conserve water, raising your blood pressure. So that's the RAS system, the renin angiotensin aldosterone system. How does the kidney know how much urine to keep and how much urine to get rid of? Well, there is a formula, and the formula is excretion of a solute is equal to filtration in the glomerulus plus secretion minus absorption. Three big words: filtration, secretion, absorption. Here are the definitions. Glomerular filtration. In the glomerulus, blood and plasma get filtered into the capsule. Tubular reabsorption. Along the renal tubule and collecting duct, water and other substances get reabsorbed from the renal tubule and ultimately back into the blood. This is things that we keep. This is things that we keep. And then you have secretion. All along the renal tubule and collecting duct, substances such as waste, drugs, and excess ions get secreted into the renal tubule. These substances ultimately make their way into the urine. So the formula is excretion of a solute is equal to glomerular filtration plus secretion minus reabsorption. That is what happens in your kidneys. That is what determines what goes out and what stays in the blood. Okay? It's driven by blood pressure. Glomerular filtration is driven by blood pressure. There are many opposing forces. But what you should really know about this is if the blood supply to the kidney is adequate, glomerular filtration is adequate. If blood supply to the kidney is constricted, you'll have less glomerular filtration. If your blood pressure is 200 over 130, the arterioles of your kidney will constrict. Hypertension is the number one cause of renal failure because you can't get enough blood supply to the kidneys. Okay? I want you to know the last sentence is extremely important. In one day, in 24 hours, 180 liters of water pass out of the glomerular capsule with a normal blood pressure. Glomerular filtration rate is the amount of filtrate formed by both kidneys every minute. Homeostasis requires the kidneys to maintain a normal, constant glomerular filtration rate. If the glomerular filtration rate is too high, which is very rare, substances pass out too quickly and are not reabsorbed. What we worry about is when the GFR is too low. Nearly all reabsorbed and some waste products are not adequately excreted. If your blood pressure is 200 over 130, your glomerular filtration rate will be decreased because the arteries to your kidneys are constricted. That means the blood flow is constricted. When the blood flow is constricted, your glomerular filtration rate drops. Does everyone understand that? Because it gets a little sticky on the next few slides.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm not going to talk to you or ask you any questions on the pressures in the kidneys. These are the pressures inside the kidneys. These are not important. These are not important. What's important is glomerular filtration rate. That is what's important. Okay? The averages are basically over 100 milliliters per minute. You don't have to know exact numbers. But what you have to know about the glomerular filtration rate, it is controlled by three things. It is controlled by the kidneys themselves, it is controlled by the nervous system, and it is controlled by hormones. And we'll now talk about the control of glomerular filtration rate. The kidneys themselves have smooth muscle cells in the afferent arterioles, the arteries that go inside the kidney, that take the blood inside the kidney. And they respond to elevated blood pressure. If your blood pressure is elevated, these smooth muscle cells will constrict the arteries and will lower glomerular filtration rate. You also have another mechanism called tubular glomerular feedback. This feedback system responds to local influences. And one of the local influences is a neurotransmitter called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide, when it is released, will dilate the arteries. And when the arteries are dilated, glomerular filtration will increase. When the arteries are constricted, glomerular filtration will decrease. So this is autoregulation. The control condition is glomerular filtration. There are receptors in the juxtaglomerular apparatus that detect the delivery of salt and water and other ions. The control center is the juxtaglomerular apparatus, the apparatus that houses renin. When you have a decreased secretion of nitric oxide, the arteries will constrict, and that will decrease glomerular filtration rate. Neural. The kidneys have a rich supply of sympathetic nerve fibers. When there is a strong sympathetic stimulation, such as when you're running or when you're bleeding, the afferent arterioles will constrict. Glomerular filtration rate will drop. Urine output will drop. And more blood is available to the organs that need the blood. So when you're running, you don't need to urinate. Your kidneys are not filtrating that much urine because your muscles, your heart, your lungs, and your brain need more blood. When you're hemorrhaging, your kidneys don't make much urine. Glomerular filtration rate is decreased because the place where you're hemorrhaging needs more blood. And also your lungs and your heart and your brain need more blood. So sympathetic stimulation will cause constriction of the afferent arterioles of the kidney, and you will make less urine because your glomerular filtration rate will be lower. Hormone regulation. We talked about these two hormones already. Angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 is the constrictor of the afferent and efferent arterioles, raising your blood pressure and decreasing GFR. When your blood pressure raises, the constriction of the arterioles takes place. There is little blood going through your kidneys, and you have a decreased glomerular filtration rate. Atrial natriuretic peptide, AMP, relaxes the cells of your kidneys, increasing the capillary surface area and increasing GFR because AMP relaxes all your arteries. It's the only hormone in your body that will lower your blood pressure. So they work in opposite directions. Angiotensin 2 raises your blood pressure and decreases your GFR, where ANP lowers your blood pressure and raises GFR. Okay? So this is a review. Here's the review. We just went over this whole thing. This is a great slide. I'll take a few questions from this slide, and you'll see the effect on glomerular filtration rate. Here it is, right here. Basically, all of these mechanisms, the renal autoregulation, the neural regulation, and angiotensin 2, decrease GFR. The only thing that increases GFR is ANP. ANP. Okay? Now, there are other things that increase GFR. Let me give you an example. Or let me ask you a question. Let me ask Preet. I'll ask you this question. When you drink too much fluid, say you drink 3 gallons of water, do you make more urine or less urine?
More.
More. If you make more urine, does your GFR increase or decrease?
Increase?
Yeah, it increases. Okay? Does everybody understand that concept? You drink more urine, right. You drink more fluid, you make more urine. Making more urine means that your GFR has been increased. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, let me ask you another question, and I'll ask it to Melissa. Melissa, what effect does alcohol have on GFR? When you drink alcohol, does your GFR increase or decrease? Do you make more urine or you make less urine? Melissa, are you still with us? Maybe not. Kennedy,
Hi.
hey, did you get the question?
Is it more?
Yes, it's more. More GFR and more urine. Okay? So there are drugs that affect GFR. There are drugs that affect GFR. So that's important to understand. All right? The majority of the filtrate is reabsorbed, especially water, glucose, amino acids, and ions. You need it. If you need it, it will be reabsorbed. What is secretion is things that are wasteful. How do you, that word should be managed. How do you manage your pH? You get rid of acid. Not only do you get rid of acid, you retain base. You retain base. Okay? And we'll talk about acid-base balance on Thursday. Okay? This is a very important slide. I want you to look at the substances. I want you to look what is filtered, what is reabsorbed. Reabsorbed means it's returned back to the blood. And what becomes urine. Look at this very carefully. Carly.
Hello.
Hello, Carly. Tell me, by looking at this chart, how much glucose should be in your urine?
It says 0 grams.
That means there should be no glucose in your urine, correct?
Yep.
Look, here it is. The filtered amount is 162. The reabsorbed amount is 162. The excreted amount is 0. So how do we diagnose diabetes? Diabetes mellitus is a disease in which your sugar is too high. Okay? So what this means is this 162 number is extremely important. It's extremely important. What if this number was 180? Was 180? Okay? You're only going to reabsorb 162, giving you 18 grams, which will be in your urine. That means the threshold of glucose has been exceeded, and the overspill will spill out into your urine. And if we check your urine with a dipstick, it will be positive for glucose. And that will mean that you can no longer filter and reabsorb sugar the way you should be able to do it. Does that make sense?
Like no longer like forever, or just like until you're gonna get that situated?
Until we can treat you.
Yeah, okay. I'm about to
Okay,
say that.
if your diabetes is due to being overweight and you lose weight, then you can do it yourself.
Well,
You can do
okay.
it yourself, okay? But you'll learn in the endocrine system that diabetes is basically a lack of a hormone, and that hormone is insulin. And we have to tweak that a little bit to be able to cure your, well, not cure your diabetes, but help you live with your diabetes.
Or
Okay?
so the reabsorbed amount is 162, like, and that's like the standard, like across the board.
Yes,
Or is it-
that is the
okay.
standard. That is the standard. It's actually on the high level, but it is the standard. It is the standard. Yeah. I'm not going to ask you these numbers. Don't worry about the numbers. I'm not going to ask you those numbers. But I may ask you the number of glucose that should be in the urine in a normal person, and that number is 0. There should be no glucose in your urine.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Okay, Sam, now that I have your attention, when you look at this chart, tell me what is the most abundant substance in your urine?
The chloride ions.
Look again.
Am I tripping? Oh no, wait. I gotta be tripping. Wait. Yeah, it's 640 grams.
Uh-huh. What's the most abundant substance in your urine?
Oh,
When
it's
you
in
go,
the urine. In it. Okay.
yeah. When you go
The
to the
urine.
bathroom, what's the most abundant substance in your urine?
How you pronounce this?
Don't worry about
Urea?
pronouncing it. That's wrong. To pronounce it is wrong.
Oh, okay. Well, the urea. Urea?
Look at the chart.
Ain't this it right here? Oh, you can't see my screen. I'm tripping.
What's the most abundant substance in your urine?
Oh, that's gotta be it.
Linnea will tell you.
Is it water?
Thank you. It's
Oh,
water.
no. It's just
It's
it.
water. It's water. Okay. When when you take a biology exam and one of the choices is water, it's
Yeah, that's probably the answer.
almost always correct. It's almost always correct. Okay. Sam,
Yes, sir.
what's the most abundant stuff in your blood?
Here we go. Turn the blood. Water.
Thank you. Water. Exactly. I want to make sure everybody gets that. Okay. Now, let's talk about waste. If you look at this chart, the last 4 substances is waste. Urea, potassium, uric acid, and creatinine. All of those substances are considered waste. Okay? 3 of them, or well, 2 of them, actually, that's not really correct. Only 1 of them you don't need. And the one you don't need is urea. You never need urea. Okay? But you need potassium, you need uric acid, and you need creatinine. Okay? Can someone tell me, where does creatinine come from? What makes creatinine? Dennis, do you know?
I'm not really sure.
Hannah, do you know?
No, I'm not sure.
Is it protein?
Yes, it is protein. That's number 1. Number 1 is protein. It's protein. Where in your body does that protein come from? Hannah?
Wait, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, creatinine is a byproduct of protein.
Mm-hmm.
In your body, where does that protein come from?
Your muscles?
Thank you. Yes, your muscles. That's where creatinine comes from. It comes from your muscles. Okay? So that's very important to understand. Okay? You lose the protein of your muscle every time you go to the bathroom to urinate. Okay? Urea also comes from amino acids, but from other parts of the body. Okay? So, urea, potassium, uric acid, and creatinine are all waste products. Okay? And normally, where water goes, salt goes. So, salt is sodium chloride. So, the majority of ions that are in your urine is sodium and chloride. All right? Don't worry about reabsorption routes. That's not important. It gets too confusing. I'm not going to ask you any questions on that. I'm also not going to ask you any AP1 questions. This is AP1. This is anti-porters and symporters. Don't worry about that. I'm not going to ask you any questions on that. Not important. Really not important stuff about reabsorption. That's not important. Okay? And I'm not going to ask you the structures of the distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. That's not important. But I am certainly going to ask you questions on hormones. And this chart is extremely important. We've talked about 3 of these hormones already. We've talked about angiotensin II, we've talked about aldosterone, and we've talked about ANP. For review, angiotensin II is part of the RAS system. It's part of the RAS system. And in the presence of low blood volume or low blood pressure, the renin system starts and produces eventually angiotensin II, which increases the reabsorption of salt and water and increases your blood pressure. Don't worry about mechanism, that's not important. Aldosterone, part of the RAS system. Aldosterone is produced by the adrenal cortex. Because of angiotensin II, it stimulates the cortex of the adrenal gland to produce aldosterone, which increases the secretion of potassium, the reabsorption of sodium, increasing your reabsorption of water, which increases your blood pressure and blood volume. And then we have ANP, produced by the by the atria of the heart, increases the excretion of sodium, increases urine output, and is the only hormone in your body that decreases blood volume and blood pressure. But now you have 2 more. You have ADH, anti-diuretic hormone. The word diuresis means to urinate. The word anti means against. ADH, antidiuretic hormone, against urination. The increase in osmolarity of the extracellular fluid or a decreased blood volume produces the release of ADH from the posterior pituitary, increases the reabsorption of water, and decreases osmolarity of your body fluids. ADH. There is one drug that will consistently stimulate the inhibiting effect of ADH. Does anyone know what drug inhibits ADH? It's a drug that I would ask you on an exam, okay? Because it's a naturally occurring compound. What happens when you drink alcohol? You inhibit ADH and you urinate more. What is a hangover? Can anyone tell me what a hangover is?
Like the scientific definition, or you want
Just
like
tell me what you think it is, Sam. What do you think it is?
I think a hangover is when you are drunk, you go to sleep, and you wake up and you're still drunk.
That's not the definition.
Yeah. Oh, you see it. I didn't know if you were looking for like the actual definition. I don't know.
No, but it's not correct. It's not correct. Well, this is what happens. Look, you go out and you drink 10 beers and 10 shots. You're drunk. I would think anybody that drank 10 beers and 10 shots would be drunk, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. During that time of 10 beers and 10 shots, you're going to the bathroom a lot, correct?
Okay.
That makes sense so far?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. You now go home and pass out on your bed. Okay? Now, when you pass out on your bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, your alcohol level is probably over 200. Okay? Or, it's you're legally intoxicated. If you sleep for more than 8 hours, every hour you sleep, your alcohol level drops by 20. So hopefully in 10 hours, if your alcohol level is 200, in 10 hours, your alcohol level will be 0 when you wake up. And you will have a hangover. The reason you have a hangover is because you are dehydrated.
Oh, wow.
Because alcohol inhibits ADH, and you cannot maintain your volume of blood because you peed it all out the night before when you were drunk. So the treatment of a hangover is water. That's the treatment of a hangover. Does everybody understand that?
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, good. The other hormone is PTH, otherwise known as parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone is there to raise your calcium levels. In the presence of decreased calcium, the parathyroid glands will release parathormone from your parathyroid glands. Parathyroid hormone stimulates the osteoclast of bone to break down bone to produce more calcium. And when you produce more calcium, you get an increased reabsorption of calcium to raise your blood pressure and raise your GFR. So know these 5 hormones. You know 3 of them already. All you other have to do is know ADH and PTH. And we'll talk much more about those two other hormones as well as aldosterone when we talk about the endocrine system. Okay? How much urine do you produce? Well, it all depends on how much fluid you take in. Homeostasis requires the maintenance of the fluid you take in and the fluid you excrete. The concentration of urine depends on the production of antidiuretic hormone. If you have a high intake of fluid, your urine will look like water. It will be clear like water. That's known as dilute urine. If you have a low intake of fluid, your body keeps that fluid and your urine will be darker in color. That's called concentrated urine. So dilute urine is high volume urine. Concentrated urine is low volume urine. Don't worry about all this other stuff. That's not important. I don't really agree with it either, so I'm not going to talk about it. Multipliers, or there'll be no questions on counter current multipliers. That's not important. But what do you do when you try to evaluate someone's urine? Remember, we looked at that chart and you should have 0 glucose in your urine. If you have glucose in your urine, these are abnormals. These should not be in your urine, okay? If you have glucose in your urine, it's diagnostic basically of diabetes, okay? Albumin. Albumin is a plasma protein. You shouldn't have albumin in your urine. Red blood cells. You shouldn't have red blood cells in your urine. What color do you think your urine would be if you were bleeding into your kidneys?
They say either red or brown.
Yeah, it's either red or brown. You are correct. You are correct. And that's called hematuria. Hematuria means there's blood in your urine. Okay? Ketone bodies. Where do you get ketone bodies from? Where do ketones come from? Emma, you with us?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Where do you get ketones from?
Do they come from your kidneys?
Well, they do eventually, but what has to break down to give you ketones in your urine? Here are your choices. You ready? Here are your choices. Carbohydrates, proteins, fats.
Protein?
Carbohydrates, proteins, fat.
Is it protein?
Is it fats?
Who said that?
Lindsay?
Lindsay said fat. You are correct. You are correct. Okay? What does it mean when you break down fat? Emma, I'll give you another chance. What does it mean when you break down fat?
I'm not sure.
How about Spencer? Spencer, you there?
Yeah.
What happens when you break down fat? What does that mean?
Doesn't it produce ketone bodies?
It does, but you're right. But what does it mean? You come into my emergency department, you're not feeling well, and I do a urine on you, and your urine shows ketone bodies in your urine. What am I going to ask you? Why do you have ketone bodies in your urine? I'm not going to ask you that. You don't even know what ketone bodies are. If you're a patient, not you, Spencer, But do you understand what I'm trying to ask you?
Not really.
What kind of condition makes you break down fat?
Well, like exercise.
One. That's one. That's correct. What else?
Just like regular digestion.
But it wouldn't be in your urine. It wouldn't be in your
Oh.
urine. Okay. Dwayne, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You don't sound happy.
Sorry, just tired.
Okay. Tell me what kind of condition you would have to be in to break down fat so much that it would be in your urine.
Would it possibly be like some type of like eating disorder?
Yes, that's one. What if you're starving to death? What if you haven't eaten for 3 or 4 days? What if you have nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea and you can't keep anything down? Your body, to produce glucose, will break down fat to produce glucose. Does everybody understand that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we understand.
Okay, if you break down fat, you're in trouble. You're in trouble unless you're doing it on purpose. Okay? Unless you're doing it on purpose. What if you're on a diet and you want to lose 20 pounds? You're not going to eat enough and you're going to lose weight because your body will be degrading fat to produce glucose, and a byproduct of that is ketone bodies. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. Ariana Colon, are you there? No. Isaiah.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. What does this mean? There are microbes in your urine. What the hell's that?
That there's bacteria in your urine.
Right. There's bacteria in your urine. So what am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you that your urine is sterile. There should be no bacteria in your urine. When there is bacteria in your urine, you have an infection. You have an infection. Okay? So these 5 things should never be in your urine. Never. All right? It's a sign of disease if it is. Okay? Let's leave the kidney. Let's go into the ureters. Each ureter transports urine from the renal pelvis by peristalsis, hydrostatic pressure, and gravity. There are no valves involved. There is no valve opening in the ureter into the bladder. When the bladder fills, it compresses the opening from the ureter to the bladder to prevent backflow. The bladder is a hollow, distensible, muscular organ with a capacity of about a liter, Okay? Anthony,
I'm ready, Professor.
what happens when your bladder gets full?
Well, what you go to the bathroom?
Thank
empty
you.
your bladder?
There you go. You empty it, right? So when your bladder's full, you empty it. Okay? So that's important. That's important to understand. Okay? When your bladder gets full, you empty it. You empty it. There is a muscle outside of your bladder called the detrusor muscle, which contracts to push urine into the urethra. And once it gets into the urethra, it goes into the toilet. I hope it goes into the toilet. Okay? So that is your bladder and your urethra. This happens to be a female. This happens to be a female. In the male, the urethra not only discharges urine, but it also discharges semen. Okay? Discharges semen. I want you to understand that the word micturition means the discharge of urine. Peeing is the vernacular term. Okay? It is controlled by muscles. It can be voluntary or involuntary. Okay? Sometimes, if you're laughing or coughing, you pee on yourself. That's because some of your discharge of urine is involuntary. But I will tell you that the discharge of urine is controlled by your spinal cord, not by your brain, by your spinal cord. Your brain certainly is involved, but if you don't have the spinal reflex, you cannot empty your bladder. And you learned as a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old to control the spinal reflex. When your bladder is stretched, it triggers a spinal reflex. We have all learned how to control our bladder. So that is extremely important to understand. Okay? We're talking about getting rid of waste. And on Thursday, we're going to talk about buffering systems. We're going to talk more about the blood. We're going to talk more about the lungs. We're going to talk more about sweat and more about the GI tract. Okay? Because these are the mechanisms that get rid of waste. They get rid of waste. 4 systems that get rid of waste. Again, the respiratory system, the urinary system, the integumentary system, otherwise known as your skin, and the digestive system. Okay? Don't worry about fetal development of your urinary system. That's definitely not important. There are some problems with your kidneys, and the number one problem with your kidney is kidney stones. 1 in 10 people will develop a kidney stone during their lifetime. Kidney stones are caused by various problems. Okay? The number one entity of a kidney stone is calcium. So if you have any problems with calcium metabolism, you will have kidney stones. If you don't drink enough fluid, you will have concentrated urine and you'll be more susceptible to have kidney stones. Kidney stones occur in all seasons, but is more common in the summertime. And the reason it's more common in the summertime is because people sweat more and they don't drink enough in the summertime. Okay, they're outside at the beach, they're basking in the sun, they don't drink enough and they sweat. So if you have a decreasing glomerular filtration rate, you will have susceptibility to have kidney stones. Okay? And the other diseases are there. The one disease that isn't there is prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is the number one cancer in men. 17% of all men over the age of 60 will have prostate cancer in their lifetime. So prostate cancer is pretty big and is the number one cancer in men. Okay? So, we're not going to talk about the urinary system diseases. We're going to talk about the gastrointestinal diseases, but I thought you should know something about kidney stones and prostate cancer. All right? Any questions on that? All right. Time for a review of the digestive system. All right? So let's start with Melissa. Melissa, you're there. You may have left. Anthony.
I'm here, Professor.
Okay, good. Here you go. Ready? Boom. Peristalsis is part of which digestive process?
Is that propulsion?
You knew that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Gianna V.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. All of the following are part of the alimentary canal except.
D. Liver.
Thank you. Very good. Nicole. Mary Kate.
Hey, Professor.
Hey. Ooh. Ooh. No, don't worry. We didn't go over this. Oh, this is interesting. Which histological layer of the alimentary canal is known as the visceral peritoneum? You have to know, what you have to know here, Mary Kate, is what type of membrane is the visceral peritoneum?
Is it C, serosa?
You are correct. It is serosa. Very good. Kennedy?
Hello.
Hello. This membrane that lines the body wall of the abdominal cavity is?
C. Parietal peritoneum.
Correct. Correct. Emma?
Hello.
Hey. Ooh. Excessive acidity in the stomach causes a blank in the blank secretion.
Is it B?
B as in boy.
Yeah.
Do you know what CCK is?
No.
You're guessing, right?
Yeah.
CCK is cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin is produced by the small intestine. Okay? So anything with CCK in it here has nothing to do with the stomach. Nothing to do with the stomach. The answer is a decrease in gastrin because in the stomach, the enteroendocrine cells produce gastrin, which increases the acidity of the stomach. If the acidity of the stomach is excessive, that means that gastrin will be decreased. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah.
Yes.
Boom. We didn't go over this, but well, it's interesting to see if you know this or not. The esophageal hiatus is found in this organ. Don't say esophagus, okay?
Is it the pharynx?
No, it's actually the diaphragm. It's actually the diaphragm. All right, we didn't go over. That's okay. We didn't go over it. Preet.
I'm here.
I know. Saliva is composed mostly of?
Water.
I should have asked Sam this question. Water. You are correct. See that, Sam? Water. Water. There it is. Okay. All right. Carly.
Hello.
Hello. Ooh. Which of the following phases of gastric secretion is a conditioned reflex? An interesting question. First of all, Carly.
Yes.
What does that mean? Conditioned reflex. What does that mean?
I would assume that your body does it naturally.
Does it naturally because it is a repetitive reflex? You ever hear of Pavlov's dogs?
Yeah.
Do you know the story about Pavlov's dogs?
I know it has to do with a bell and the timing of when they bring the dog food out and whether they salivate or not.
Correct. That's a conditioned reflex. So which of the following phases of gastric secretion is a conditioned reflex? Now you should give me the answer.
Intestinal phase.
What if I told you that a conditioned reflex is in your mind? You ring the bell. Oh, good. I'm going to get food. Let me start salivating. What word here means head?
The cephalic phase?
Yeah, of course. Okay, everybody understand that? Dennis.
Yeah.
Okay. The gastric cells that secrete pepsinogen are the, I guarantee you, I'm going to ask you this question on exam number 3. I guarantee it.
It's either B or D, right?
No,
It's not.
no.
Then it has to be A.
No,
No, C.
it has to be C. Chief cells. Chief cells produce pepsinogen. Okay? Know these cells of the gastric mucosa. Know what they produce. Very important. Hannah.
Hello.
Hey. Most of the digestive enzymes found in the small intestine are secreted by this accessory organ.
Is it the pancreas?
Congratulations. I want you to know all of the enzymes that are produced by the pancreas. Very, very important. Dwayne,
Yes.
which of the following is not an enzyme produced by the pancreas?
Hold on. To C.
No, it's actually D. There's no such thing as that enzyme. That's a made up enzyme. That's made up. Patricia.
Hello?
Hey. Can you see this, Patricia, all right?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I'm just making sure. You still on your phone?
Yes.
Okay, all right. The substance secreted by the pancreas that helps neutralize chyme. This will be on exam number 3. I guarantee it.
Hold on. Neutralizes chyme. Is it the A tritrypsin?
No, that's an enzyme. Let me ask you,
Yeah.
Patricia, let me ask you this.
Hold on. Okay.
Let me ask you this question. What is, So what?
No, I said I'm waiting.
Okay. What is the acidity of chyme? Is it acid or base?
I don't know. I'm thinking it is acid, right?
It's acid. So what
Right.
would neutralize acid? What are the 4 choices would neutralize acid?
Well, I was thinking, wouldn't it be the bicarbonate?
It would
No?
be. It would
Okay,
be.
that's right.
It's
All right.
it's bicarbonate.
Right. Okay.
Melanie? Linnea?
Hi.
Hi. This hormone triggers the release of enzyme-rich pancreatic juice. This is a hard question, but you should know the answer. Let me give you a hint. You ready?
Yeah.
There are 2 hormones on this list of the 4 that are secreted by the small intestine. One of them is the answer. The other 2 are meaningless.
Is it A?
Yes, it's A. CCK. Secretin and CCK are produced by the small intestine. This hormone, CCK, triggers the release of pancreatic juice from the small intestine. Spencer.
Okay.
Hey, this hormone relaxes the hepatopancreatic sphincter. I will give you the same thing that I gave Linnea. There are 2 hormones on this list, and one of them is the answer. Produced by the small intestine.
Is it CCK?
Correct. Very good. Brianna. Maddie.
Hello, I know on the topic of pancreas, my blood sugar is very low. So if I answer a question like, that is why, because I literally cannot concentrate right now. But
Why
we'll
don't
try.
you eat? Go eat something.
No, I did. I had like 3 juice boxes. I've been low for like 12 hours. I don't know why. But I'll try to answer.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Which of the following is not part of the large intestine?
D?
Oh, no. D is part of the large intestine.
Oh, okay. I'm just guessing at this point. I have to rewatch the lecture.
Oh, okay. The answer is C, ileum. Ileum is part of the small intestine.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
All right. All right. Erica.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. The pocket-like sacs of the large intestine are called?
I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's B. Is a hostra.
Yeah, you pronounced it correctly, and you got your answer correctly, too.
Okay.
Very good. Isaiah.
What's good?
Hey. The functions of the large intestine include all of the following except
Is it C?
yes, it is C. You are correct. Joseph.
Yep.
Which of the following reflexes are we able to voluntarily control?
D.
Thank you. Yes, you are correct. Jessica. Michael.
How's it going?
Very well. Mass movement in the large intestine is initiated by?
Is it gastric reflex?
Say it again. I didn't hear you.
Gastrolic reflex?
Yeah, it's gastrocolic reflex. That's it, right?
I'm bad at pronouncing things.
That's all right. It's all right. Ariana.
I'm here.
Good. Amylase allows us to digest
A.
know these enzymes. Know these enzymes. All right? Very good. Very good. Ramsha.
Hi.
Hey. Ooh. Which specific process is mostly used to absorb water from the intestine. This is an AP1 question. I will not ask AP1 questions on exam number 3, but you should know this. Did you take AP1?
No, I didn't, but
Oh, maybe you shouldn't know it then. Well, go try.
is it osmosis?
Yes, because whenever you say the word water,
yeah.
whenever you say the word water, that's the answer, Oz. Very well done. Very well done. Lindsay,
Hi.
hey. Which of the following is not an enzyme? Interesting.
Is it bile?
Yes, you are correct. Bile. That is correct. Gianna A. Samuel.
Yes, sir.
Boom. Where does chemical digestion of lipids begin?
Yikes.
Oh, I'm going to ask this question or something similar to it. I guarantee it.
Of lipids. The answer is D.
B as in boy?
No. D.
D.
As in
Yeah,
Damon.
you are correct. You are correct. Lingual lipase. Lipase is the enzyme that digests lipids. Very well done. Very well done. Melissa. Melissa, you there? Anthony?
Hey, Professor.
Hey. Ooh. This is a hard question. Micelles are formed during the absorption of which nutrient? This is an AP1 question. I'm not going to ask you this question, but you took AP1?
Yes, I did.
You should know the answer then. Okay, maybe you should know the answer.
Is it
Go.
fatty acids?
It is fascinating. You learned something in AP1. Good for you. Gianna V.
Hello.
Hello. Intrinsic factor is produced in the stomach and is necessary for the absorption of
Vitamin B12.
bingo. And I think that's the last question. It is. Good. Good. Let me stop recording too.